Hello, I am Baal Kadmon, and I'd like to thank you for watching and or listening to this video. This is video 2 of the Demon Queens of Judaism. In the previous video, which I'll link below, we discuss Agrat bat Mahlat, which is Agrat, daughter of Mahlat. In this video, we're going to discuss Mahlat. Now, I have to say, oftentimes they confuse in the text between Agrat bat Mahlat and Mahlat, and sometimes they're referring, they're creating a situation where you think actually it's the same entity. But by the fact that Agrat is called Agrat, daughter of Mahlat, indicates that Mahlat is her own entity. But she's sort of on the margins, right? She's a mother, but perhaps the true origin, she is probably one of the true origins of the demonic lineages. And we don't see a ton on her directly in the text because she gets confused with her daughter, but she does emerge in select traditions as the queen, like a queen of demons in her own right, right? She's sort of one of the sisters of the infernal matriarchy, right? Now, interestingly enough, very similar to Naamah, we have biblical evidence for her, right? She actually, there is a woman named Mahlat in the Bible, and although she does not appear to be a demon in the Bible, just like Naamah was not, and we'll deal with Naamah in a separate video. She does appear a few times here, and let's take a look at the biblical verses. First, we're going to look at Genesis chapter 28, verse 9. So he went to Ishmael and married Mahlat, the sister of Neviot, and daughter of Ishmael, son of Abraham, in addition to the wives he already had. Now, the individual that is who took her as a wife is Esau, who is Jacob's brother, and he had founded the kingdom of Edom, which just is the root word of that is Adom, which is red, and because he had red hair in the Bible, and they sort of made the connection. Now, Esau was not necessarily the most righteous character in the Bible, so as you could see, he marries Mahlat, and by connecting the two, she becomes suspicious, right, in later tradition. But another thing that leads her, also gives her sort of a bad name, is that she is she's the daughter of Ishmael, who was, in the Bible at least, in Judaism, is the least favored of the sons of Abraham. So, and remember, Hagar, which was his mother, was cast out, and because Sarah was, jealous of her and all of that. So we see sort of this double whammy with Mahlat, right? She's not only now married to Esau, who is essentially a little bit of a villain in the Bible, but she is the daughter of Ishmael, who is the least favorite son in the Old Testament. Now, in Islam, it's different. Ishmael is the favorite son. And then we see another verse of her, not in the Torah, but in one of the books, the Old Testament books, called the Book of Chronicles. So we see in 2 Chronicles chapter 11, verse 18, it states, Rehoboam married Mahlat, who was the daughter of David's son, Yerimot, and Abichail, the daughter of Yeshai's son, Eliav. So now we see a different Mahlat, who is the daughter of David's son. Now, that's interesting. It's of course probably not the same person, right? Unless she is the demon queen, then she obviously does not die, and she will come back in other figures. Remember, I mentioned in the last video that Agrat bat Mahlat had some type of relations with David, right? And Solomon and everyone. So it's interesting that she now appears again but as the daughter of David's son. But this is Mahlat, though, the mother of Agrat bat Mahlat. So you see, that's why it's like, is this actually the same person or same entity? Could be, because, when it comes to demonic entities, there's time and it gets very asynchronous. Then all of a sudden these things don't make sense time-wise. But why I wanted to mention this was because this is, an instance where her name does appear. Now, there's another interesting term that is, about Mahlat, is that there's this term that's in Psalms 53 and Psalms 88. Now, the opening of Psalm 53, it says, "For the leader upon Mahlat, Maskil of David." And then in Psalms 88, it states, the first verse, "A song, a psalm of the sons of Korach, for the leader upon Mahlat Lenaot, Maskil of Herman, the Ezrahite." Now, in this context, the name Mahlat is sort of innocuous, right? It's a name among other names, and it's not clear what this means. It might be in this context like a musical term, though its meaning is, it's uncertain. So in all these biblical contexts, the name Mahlat is pretty innocuous. It's a name among many names in the genealogy of the Old Testament. However, just like with Naamah, which we'll discuss in another video, in the medieval period, Kabbalists and exegetical writers began to look at all these names to try to find esoteric meaning and some types of hidden connection between scripture and the demonic architecture of the universe, right? And so Mahlat, especially because she's a Ishmaelite princess and married to Esau, was essentially retroactively transformed into something more sinister. The same with Naamah, because she was related to Cain, to Tubal Cain. You see, so they're doing the same thing with Mahlat. Now, in the Midrashic reinterpretation, Midrash is essentially a exegetical text that adds stories to, adds context to the stories in the Old Testament. The daughter, because she's the daughter of Ishmael and married to Esau, they saw this as anti-Israelite bloodlines. So because both Ishmael and Esau are anti-Israel bloodlines, they became associated with impurity, foreign influence, and rebellion against God. So from this perspective, Mahlat's inclusion in this genealogy wasn't just merely a neutral thing, but it was a disruption, and it opened the door to viewing her more as a demonic entity. Now, by the 13th to 16th centuries, the Jewish mystical literature had developed, a very elaborate demonological structure in which Mahlat, of course, a biblical footnote, right, is reimagined as the demon queen, and she is considered one of the foremothers of the demons, right? And the other three are Lilith, Naamah, and Agrat. And then sort of there's a fifth one sort of, around there, Eshet Zinunim. And actually there'll be something about that in this video too, because Mahlat and Eshet Zinunim, they have some type of connection. So because she's considered one of the four mothers of the demons, she's not simply the mother of Agrat, right? She is an independent entity, and she's sort of equal in stature to the others with her own sort of, attributes and domains and stuff. Now, in Lurianic Kabbalah, which was attributed to Isaac Luria, or the Ari, and just for context, his version of Kabbalah is pretty much the Kabbalah that we know today, with the shattering of the vessels, and all of that. So So most ideas from the Kabbalah that are used today are from Isaac Luria in some way. Now, in his interpretation, and by the way, he didn't write directly, it was transmitted through his student Chaim Vital, Mahlat is described as one of the demonic consorts of Samael, who of course is the prince of demons, and he's essentially the equivalent to God, but on the left-hand path, essentially. And so he's like a left-hand angel who governs the realm of the Sitra Achra. Now, Mahlat's union with Samael, as with others, spawns destructive spirits, and so she is part of the disunity and cosmic imbalance in the world. So, very much like Lilith, where the divine presence is, she is one of the counterparts to the divine presence. Now, as I mentioned, Mahlat is sometimes paired with Eshet Zenunim, which just means the woman of whoredom or women. But the root word, Isha, can also mean wife. So if, let's say, someone says, my wife, it's Ishti, right? So it's, Eshet is coming from that root word. So she's also sometimes considered, the Eshet Zinunim, as sometimes includes Mahlat in place of Eshet Zinunim and vice versa. So in that capacity, that means that Mahlat represents also sort of the sexual spiritual temptation. Because all of these spirits, they may not initially start as being sexually, how can I say, not permissive, but sexually dangerous to people. They do become that in the end, so all of them. Now, I want to return again to the idea of Mahlat and the bloodlines of Esau and Ishmael, because actually I think that is the most interesting story and transformation. So as we've seen, the Kabbalists hinted in some of the oral teachings that Mahlat is reimagined as the daughter, as a demoness, that is, the literal daughter of Ishmael and the granddaughter of Abraham. But she somehow turns away from God's covenant, right? So she becomes essentially a sorceress. She's banished in the desert, and she encounters a male demon. Some called it Samael, right? It could have been Samael. Igeret, or even Asmodeus, right? And becomes impregnated with Agrat, who herself is now half human, half demonic, right? So if this narrative is true, then yes, it does explain literally how she brought Agrat into the world. It links the demonic impurity to the biblical outcast lineages. And, I'm saying this, I'm not being controversial here, but in Judaism, there is an outcast lineage, Ishmael and Esau. Now, in Jewish interpretation, Ishmael is supposedly the progenitor of Arab nations. I didn't make that up. That's how Judaism sees Ishmael, and even Arab nations see it this way too. In Islamic tradition, Ishmael is the favorite son, whereas in Judaism, Isaac's the favorite son, and Ishmael is sort of the outcast. So it was even political before the whole politics even existed. And then we have Esau, who is the progenitor of the Edomites, the brother of Jacob, but in later tradition, he became the progenitor of the Romans too. So in Jewish history, both the Edomites and the Romans are very hostile. They're the worst enemies that the nation of Israel could ever have. The Romans destroyed the Second Temple, and really harmed Judaism back in the Second Temple period. So by Esau being the progenitor of the Romans and Mahlat being Esau's wife, you can see how there's some type of connection here. So at once she was noble, she was a princess, and now she becomes the matriarch of darkness. So her whole family noble heritage is now a demonic counterpart to the patriarchs, the Abraham and everyone. So it's literally a rejection of the divine path. Whether she was forced to do it or by desire, it sets in motion this movement, this lineage of anti-covenantal lineage, right? Not Isaac, Jacob, and Israel, but Ishmael, Esau, Mahlat, and Agrat. Now, in some interpretations, Mahlat is not only the mother of Agrat, but also a sorceress. She supposedly had studied with the fallen angels and learned spells through them, right? So that makes sense because that explains Agrat's later association with magic as well, and we saw part of that in the Talmud in the previous video. So it's just really interesting how she turned from just some mention in the Bible to now one of the 4 queens of hell, essentially. And I just think that that's very, very interesting. Now, in Jewish magic, especially protective magic, we often see the name Lilith, right? But sometimes we'll see something really interesting. They'll mention Mahlat, but as the daughter of Lilith, or Lilith herself. So it's very interesting. Mahlat is named in exorcistic formulas to banish her to the desert. In some, she is mentioned alongside the other demonesses, to be bound by the angels of mercy, to not touch this child, right? This is part of the amulets. And she's also seen as bringing nightmares and wet dreams and false visions. So Mahlat is also accused of doing that. So you could see the other demonesses also have that same reputation. So although Mahlat is more ambiguous than the others, she has the same qualities. And unfortunately, because she is always associated with her daughter, they get mixed up sometimes. So anyway, this is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. In the next one, I'm going to discuss Naamah. I already have a video of her, but more in context of her and the fallen angels. And the next one, I'll give you some more interesting background about her. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next one. So mote it be.